Well, welcome back to Dave and Bill from the Hill, whether it be Forest Hill or the Capitol Hill.
Yes,
We're here.
Bill.
Day 9 of the General Assembly. It's been an interesting start to this session. We've been putting out videos trying to keep everyone informed about the things that are going on. We appreciate the response to House Bill 1314. We had a chance to talk to the patron yesterday. Though she didn't say she was going to pull the bill, she did say that she realized that she has problems with the bill and that she's looking at ways to amend or fix some of those problems. I don't know how she can do it, but at least your calls and your comments have been very helpful. So
You're right, Bill, and thank you so much for all the input. And we do know that there were a great deal of folks that got on the email or got on the phone and reached out to their delegates, their senators,
right.
and to Delegate Maldonado's office as well to state their displeasure with respect to what that bill could bring. And while she didn't tell us how she might avoid these issues, we do believe that the bill is not in a state where it could be rectified.
Right.
It's just bad public policy.
And I think all the other legislators on her side who've been hearing from our people have kind of explained to her this has become a very controversial bill. So I'm sure she's really looking at what she can do with the bill.
Absolutely. And for today's episode, Bill, we wanted to talk about collective bargaining, but we wanted to revisit it in a way that we really haven't expounded upon, and that is the cost.
Right.
And in terms of the two bills, House Bill 1263 and Senate Bill 378, that's Delegate Tran's bill and Senator Serville's bill. We've talked about them a little bit.
Right. Well, we didn't know until now. I think Senator Serville's bill didn't drop until 2 days ago, and we knew Delegate Tran's bill was there. We've reached out to explain some of our problems with that bill to Delegate Tran. Of course, we would prefer to be removed from it. We know the cost of this thing, and that's the one thing that we haven't talked about a whole lot in this whole administration and this whole General Assembly, as we've been there for the last 9 days, have been centered around affordability, making life more affordable for the citizens of the Commonwealth and those that work and live and raise a family here.
Absolutely. And one thing that we can tell you is that the previous fiscal impacts for the collective bargaining bills have been in the $19 million range. We know that that's just a start. It's not going to cover what the cost that fully encompasses what collective bargaining will mean to the Commonwealth or to localities. And pretty much what it'll break down to is a couple of distinct things: wage increases, benefit increases, arbitration, and a brand new administrative unit, department, if you will, section of the government.
Build more bureaucracy within the
Exactly.
state government.
And so what that will look like is a board, but essentially it's going to have the same things that it would include any other government agency. It's going to have staff. It's going to have attorneys. It's going to have, folks obviously on the board and their assistants. All of that will cost money. And in terms of what it will actually cost, we don't really know because the General Assembly is not talking about the actual cost. But we do know something about the cost that's going to be pretty significant. That is that it's a fixed cost. And what that means is that when there's a contract in place, it's an agreement, it's been funded. It's a fixed cost going forward. As long as the contract's been funded, it will go on. So revenues fall and rise.
Yep. They ebb and flow. The revenue forecasts are always given every quarter. Those ebb and flow. So you have to adjust your budget because of the constitutional amendment that says that you have to balance your budget. You have to adjust that budget as you go. So that fixed price is where the problem will begin to arise within state government, and that will create a situation where the administration then is going to be saying, "We'll make cuts here, make cuts there," because this is a part they
Yeah, it could be not hiring folks, cutting cost elsewhere, because
car
contract has to be funded. They've obligated themselves to this,
cars, equipment, training.
and that can become a big problem. So, in terms of what we do know, we don't know what it's actually going to cost Virginia because the folks in state government are not looking at that. They're not projecting out what the cost will look like. The only thing that we've seen so far with respect to anything dealing with collective bargaining is that initial cost. And we know that's not going to cover it. We do have one indication of what it might cost. So the Heritage Foundation did a study, and they looked at states that had collective bargaining and states that did not. And with respect to collective bargaining spending, the average was about $600 to $750 per family, per taxpayer. And about $3,000 generally for a family of four, in increased taxes. And that's just for collective bargaining.
Yeah, and just elaborate on that just a minute. That's an empirical study that was done in states where they have it. So it isn't like these are numbers that you draw from the air.
No, this is actual
listed the actual spending.
State compared to state, non-collective bargaining versus collective bargaining. They just took those numbers and they compared them.
Right.
Where are the states that are funding collective bargaining spending compared to the states that are not funding collective bargaining?
Right.
And as far as government spending is concerned, in the collective bargaining realm. And so they just compared those numbers, and the difference is about $600 to $750 per taxpayer. If you extrapolate that bill across our 4.2 million taxpayers in Virginia, you're looking at about $2.7 billion in potential cost.
Right. Which is now a huge number because they're looking at revenues decreasing, budget shortfalls due to Medicaid expansion and so forth like that. So that number really is important because that then when you're talking about ebbs and flows in your budget, that then starts to tank whatever you've got in reserves or whatever if you're going to meet this demand. And that's just, what the state's going to charge as far as setting up this program. We talked about the 19 billion or million that it cost that from the last fiscal impact. There wasn't a whole lot of counties that reported in.
Yeah, just a couple.
Just a couple. So
just to put it in perspective, as my recollection from last year, one that did stand out was Chesterfield County, and their fiscal impact was listed at $200 million.
Yeah.
For one county. And we do have a sense of how this thing will play out in Virginia. And in fact, the very locality that we're about to mention,
right,
gave a forewarning to the state that hey, you might want to pay attention because essentially Fairfax has budgetary problems too. They have collective bargaining. They had contracts that were submitted to the jurisdiction, to the Board of Supervisors. They included hefty pay raises because the unions demanded that. And they were unable to fund those contracts. It's our understanding that Fairfax is going to try to get some money from the state to try to help fund their collective bargaining process. But that warning to the state is, if Fairfax, the richest county in Virginia, and I believe it's the richest county in the nation.
Yeah, numbers have shown.
Yeah, and if they're having difficulty paying their contracts or funding their contracts, then Virginia, especially with what you just mentioned,
right,
about the state's budget forecast, then Virginia's going to have a really tough time with it.
And it's how's that affected their employee numbers? I mean, how many more police officers have they seen come to work for Fairfax since they got this contract and got collective bargaining?
Bill, it hasn't happened. One of the things that proponents of collective bargaining will say is that collective bargaining is going to fix many of the ills within law enforcement, and recruiting and retention being one of those. But that has not come to fruition in Fairfax. They still, according to an article that I read from last June, they were still down over 200 officers in Fairfax.
So the idea that this is going to create this mass influx of people wanting to come to work in Virginia, wanting to come to work for a police agency, is just false, because Fairfax is an example of that they don't want to do it. And the other thing is, we hear a lot about, well, this is about our pay and wanting to have an increase in the pay. We fully understand that, and that's why we're down there every day. We don't see the other groups down there every day, but we're there every day talking to legislators, telling them what the issues are. We need more troopers. They need to be paid more competitively for the states and the localities even that are paying more. And, all these things we've advocated for over the last 20 years as an association have really raised the bar on the state police as far as competitive pay. But, we don't see any other organizations while we're there beating the same drum. So, we really feel like collective bargaining. You are a taxpayer too. So that's another thing about, if I'm looking at being employed in a state as a police officer, and the competitive pay is, if one state's paying $65,000 for a starting trooper and Virginia's paying $62,000 for a starting trooper, yet I'm going to pay $3,000 more in income taxes because I've got to set this structure up as a family.
Plus, you got to pay the union.
That's the other thing I was going to get to is now I'm at the same rate, and now the union gets how much of my salary.
Our best estimate is that you're probably going to pay about 3 times more than what you pay now. Let's say you're
or the association.
Yeah. You're probably going to pay about 3 times more than what you pay now. That equates to about 1 to 2% of your salary.
Right.
That's what the union's going to demand. And the reason why is that, of course, you might get more out of it, but the reality is they're getting a whole lot more out of it.
Yeah.
And so
you might. That's a good.
Yeah, you might get something out of it.
If the money's not there to pay for it. And ultimately, this is the final decision lies in the hands of the legislature and the governor as to where they're going to cut to make the contractual agreements to be paid for, and then will that happen all along? And the answer is no, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Or is it going to come from your pension?
Mm. Or are the taxes going to go up? Which is another big conversation right now going on. There appears to be some tax increases that are going to happen across the board. And as far as funding collective bargaining, that's going to be on the backs of all the taxpayers.
Right. I think about all the things that we have talked to legislators about down there. And every time we talk to someone, and every time we were walking the hallways, talking to legislators and talking to other groups, the common theme this year is affordability. And I'm thinking in my mind, how can you marry these two? It doesn't work. So, we want everyone to be aware of what this cost is like.
Yeah.
And what it's going down the road towards. So we're hoping that you understand the dynamics of what amount of money it will take to do this.
And what it boils down to, Bill, is this: collective bargaining will not make life more affordable for the average police officer in Virginia.
It will not. And, we mentioned in our last video, there's the issue that it was written as highway patrol. We were identified as highway patrol, but yet in the code we're not defined as highway patrol. So it's going to take a real a lot more money to restructure the agency if they leave that. But after talking to one of the patrons, it was apparent that was not something that they were aware of. And it was even said, well, it was written by union attorneys,
Yeah.
and that they need to fix that. So we know who's writing the legislation, and
Could it maybe be some folks that are in a state that have a highway patrol?
I'd say that
Maybe.
it's most likely that's what they refer to the term as.
Yeah.
And you, as you and I know, there's states that have highway patrol, and there are states that have a separate Bureau of Criminal Investigations. And I would say the attorneys that wrote the bill were in a state with highway patrol.
Certainly not the case for Virginia.
Not the case for Virginia, and would it, and then affordability again. The cost of restructuring that agency would be humongous.
If that's what happens.
If I think they, our comments and our meeting with them, I think they did take to heart. Yeah, oh, we've got to amend this because this is definitely not what our state police are.
So we think that, thank you for joining in. I hope that we've given you some explanation as to what collective bargaining will actually cost Virginia. It's going to be huge. It's going to change the face of state government in Virginia on so many different levels. And, our take on it is that it's a huge cost. It's an unfunded mandate. And we're not just talking about the Commonwealth of Virginia. We're talking about localities all across the state.
Right.
Even
sheriff's departments this time.
Absolutely. They're not excluded.
Yeah.
And that remains to be seen, obviously. But if they're included, all these localities are likely going to have serious budget problems coming forward. And the Commonwealth is going to have serious budget problems because, in addition to all of the things that we talked about that could be potential costs related to collective bargaining, there's a whole slew of public policy proposals before the General Assembly that could cost a lot of money.
Well, there's a whole lot of proposals right now that they can cost a lot of money, including one that allows nonprofit organizations that open in Virginia not to have to go through the accountability of the state, basically setting up a Leering Center without being accountable to it.
Zero accountability.
Zero. So, with all that's going on in Minnesota, and we have legislators introducing bills like that, that we're seeing so much fraud.
Yeah.
And so we're encouraging you. Look, this is a decision that all of you've got to make. These two bills are out there. The affordability part for you as a family is beyond what you can understand at this point because of the amount of money that they think this will cost, but it could be so much more. And, just like with House Bill 1314, if you all realize that setting the state police into a collective bargaining unit is something that you would like to call your legislator about, I encourage you to call and tell them that this is not something the state police needs to be a part of, because I can assure you the funding won't be there, and the raises and all the things that everyone kind of alludes to that's going to be the sugarcoating, if you get it, is not going to come to fruition. And that's House Bill 1263 and Senate Bill
378. And I will tell you folks that don't take lightly the fact that you reach out and you make your voice heard on an issue, because I do believe that our prompting to have folks contact the legislators made the difference.
It is working. That's the only reason we were able to speak with the patron of House Bill 1314, and she acknowledged it.
Yes.
So,
and we knew that it was having an effect, because before we had a chance to speak with her, it was crickets, and we had no contact with the delegate. We didn't know where we stood. We couldn't get in to talk to her, and it was more than obvious, at least to us, that your contact with the legislators made all the difference here.
And I hope you'll share it with your family and your friends, because it doesn't only affect you, but it affects them.
Yeah.
If they live and reside in this state, they're going to pay for this.
Yeah, we all got to pay for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. We'll be bringing you some more information, and particularly on collective bargaining. We'll have a further breakdown for you.
And we're only on day 9.
Yes.
Thank you. We got a 60-day session to go.
Take care.